Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. I am so excited to be back here with you after a little over a year's hiatus. I am coming on today for a special solo episode to talk about how to stop procrastinating and start taking action towards a goal or dream that really matters to you. I am talking about this because it's the exact process that helped me relaunch this podcast. And if you have a goal or dream that you've been thinking about, whether it's you want to start a business, or there's a hobby you've always been wanting to try, or there's some other change in your life you've really been wanting to make and you've been procrastinating on it for whatever reason, I know this process will help you too. So keep that in mind as you're listening, and let's dive in. Okay, so the first practice that is crucial when it comes to making progress towards a goal or dream that really matters to you is clarifying your why. This is going to be so vital because if you don't have a strong why that's really driving you and motivating you and pulling you forward, it's going to be so easy to let the thoughts win, the thoughts that say, oh, I don't have time for this, or it doesn't really matter that much to me, or here's all the reasons why I shouldn't do it or shouldn't start now. If you don't have that why, you're going to quit at this point. So for me, when I thought about my why for the podcast, one of the biggest reasons was that from everything we're experiencing in the world right now, from the chaos and the turmoil and everything in the news and all the heaviness that it can feel like we're surrounded by sometimes, I was really craving to hear stories of empowerment, stories of people making a positive difference in the world. And, I read that hope fatigue is now a thing that people are getting diagnosed with because of this exactly, because of the messages that we're inundated with on a daily basis. And this hope fatigue can lead to feelings of powerlessness, depression, anxiety, etc. And for me, what combats that feeling of hope fatigue is reminding myself of what's possible, surrounding myself with examples and stories of other people making a positive difference in the world. So that's the why that really drove me to restart the podcast right now, and particularly wanting to center this season on people who are actively working to make a difference locally or globally in their communities, who are following that spark of purpose and passion and believing that they can make a difference in this world. So you're going to hear a lot of stories from local people to me in Baltimore and potentially beyond, as well as solo episodes from me that are sharing inspirations, insight, lessons, learnings to support you to do the same thing, to support you in believing that whatever spark is on your heart, it matters to you and it matters to the world and it matters to all of us. And we can all benefit in profound ways when each of us follows that calling and know that that ripple out impact matters. Because I know sometimes for me, I can feel like, oh, I'm one person. What difference can I really make? You can make a huge difference. One person can make a tremendous difference. One person can change the world. And that's what I wanted to remind myself of on this podcast. And that's what I really wanted to remind you of. So think of whatever goal you have in mind, whatever desire you have in mind. Why do you really want to do that? What really matters to you about that goal at the end of the day? And really steep yourself in that energy so that you can be deeply connected to it. So that when the negative thoughts, when the limiting questions, when the doubts come in, you have a really strong, concrete why and reason that's going to keep you going. Practice number 2. Understand how your goal or desire aligns with your goals and values. This is similar to that why question, and it's examining this from different angles and again, finding more evidence for yourself of why this matters. For me, this podcast deeply aligns with my core values, some of them being authenticity, connection, growth. So every time I get to have an interview with someone, if I get to share what's on my heart, I get to practice that energy of authenticity and invite in that energy of authenticity by sharing real, honest, open conversations that capture the whole human experience. It's not just about sharing the rainbows and daisies and butterfly moments. It's about sharing the struggles and challenges as well, and offering stories and conversations that can hopefully illuminate that full spectrum and that someone can listen to and feel inspired by and resonate with for themselves. Growth is another huge core value of mine. So continuing to do the podcast continues to help me expand out of my comfort zone, to grow in new and different ways. So this podcast deeply aligns with my core values. And when it comes to my goals, one of the biggest things that's important to me in the work that I do is supporting people to break free from external societal expectations and develop the confidence and clarity to live their most authentic, inspired life. So, if this podcast is a tool and avenue for me to help share stories, to help share resources, to help people do that, that deeply matters to me and is deeply aligned with my bigger picture goals and values for my life. Another big thing of how this podcast really resonates with what matters to me right now is that the theme for this year for me is creative expression. And I've been leaning into that in all different kinds of ways, whether it's painting the mural that you might see on the wall behind me, or doing other creative projects around my house, or I went live on Instagram and TikTok every day for the first 3 months of the year, doing things that help me flex these muscles of creativity, that help me let go of perfectionism and doing it right the first time and leaning into experimentation and play and self-expression is hugely important to me. And again, the podcast is another avenue for me to do that, for me to lean into that goal and intention in my life. So for you, how does your goal or desire align with your bigger picture goals, your bigger picture life mission, or your core values? If you don't know, you can start asking yourself questions like, what really matters to you in your lifestyle right now? How do you most want to grow or expand this year? What's most important to you in your life right now? And how does this desire align with that? For example, I have a number of clients who are really wanting to start their own businesses and put themselves out there in that way. When their brain starts telling them, oh, this is too hard, maybe I should just go back to a 9 to 5, coming back to this question of how does this desire of starting your own business really align with your goals and values is huge. Because when you know, okay, starting this business aligns with my value of growth, it aligns with my value of purpose and fulfillment, it aligns with my value of flexibility, of not having to have a strict 9 to 5 schedule every day. Reminding yourself of all of that again can deeply support you to stay committed to that goal or desire that really matters to you. Practice number 3, allow the mind and the heart to work together. So I'll tell you a story about how this played out for myself in starting the podcast. When I was thinking about restarting this podcast, and I was thinking about it for a while, for months and months, and my mind had all these questions of, oh, but how long do I want to restart it for? And when should I restart it? When should I end it? When's the election? Do I want to have it continue during the election? Do I want it to stop before the election? I had all these questions and all these thoughts. And going through that, I started thinking, oh, maybe it'll be better if I just wait till spring 2025. That's when all the stars will align and it'll be more convenient to start it then. And I shared all these thoughts with my coach. And thankfully, like a good coach does, she started asking me questions about these thoughts to really examine, were these questions true? Do they benefit me? Do they serve me? And bringing me back to, what's my why? Why does this matter so much to me? And can I do it in a simpler way than my mind was making it seem? The mind is a really useful tool, right? It can help us logistically, it can help us plan, it can help us build beliefs, and if we're not mindful and careful, it can repeat thoughts and beliefs and stories that don't serve us and block us from what we really want to do and what we really want to create. So what's important is bringing awareness to what's going on in the mind to really begin to question, are those thoughts true? Are those thoughts serving me? If you have thoughts about your goal that sound like, now is not a good time. I don't have enough time. I should probably do this later. I don't think I'm qualified to start this. I really need to go back to school. This is going to be so difficult. It's going to be so time consuming. It's just not going to work out. To really bring those thoughts to the surface, examine them, and then see if you want to keep repeating them, if they serve you. And if not, start building thoughts and beliefs that actually do serve you and do serve the goal that is most important to you. I find sometimes these ruminating thoughts are vague. They're just vague fears, vague doubts, they're not really concrete. When you begin to bring awareness to them, you can begin to examine them. So for me, I was concerned, or my mind was concerned about the timeline, how much time it was going to take, whether I should do it before or after the election. So I started writing down all these questions that my mind was offering me and then coming up with answers for them. So I decided I'm going to start with 12 weeks. This season right now, my goal is to do at least 12 weeks. If I want to continue after that, beautiful. And you can at least expect 12 episodes from now onwards. And I'm going to start now and I'm going to finish in October before the election. And we'll see after that if I want to continue, if it feels aligned to continue. So I'm answering those questions. And then I'm beginning to look for evidence that will support me. So instead of repeating to myself again and again, this is going to take so much time. It's going to take time away from what matters to me. It's going to take time away from my goals. Asking, how might it take less time than I think? What tools or resources do I have access to that could support my process? How could this deeply support my business, not detract from my business? How could this deeply support my life and my core values? And begin to build up the evidence for that. So it's about noticing and bringing awareness to what's going on in the mind, and then consciously and intentionally choosing what you want to believe, what you want to think, and building up the evidence for that. Because it takes repetition for a belief to really sink in, for a thought to really sink in. And sometimes we're so practiced at thinking the limiting thoughts, thinking the doubts, thinking the critical beliefs. So that's going to be the default. It's what our brains are going to go to. We've already built neural pathways to directly fire to those thoughts. So if you want to believe and think something new, it's going to take repetition. It's going to take evidence. It's going to take lifting those weights just like you would lift weights in the gym. If you want to get stronger, you have to lift those thought weights in your mind in order to build new beliefs. So how does the mind and heart work together? For me, like I said, the mind offers lots of questions, lots of doubts. It wants to know how it's all going to work out. And that's when I invite in the heart, when I invite in trust and put my hand on my heart and ask myself, does doing this podcast right now really matter to me? And I feel this internal yes. I feel my body leaning forward. It feels like a deep inner knowing. Even if my logical brain can't understand why, it doesn't understand what the outcome will be, it doesn't understand everything about how this season is going to go, who I'm going to interview, how it's all going to pan out. The mind has questions. The heart has a deep knowing. It has a deep spark. It has a deep pull that draws us forward to what we really desire. And again, these things go together. So they can be friends instead of enemies, because sometimes there are sparks that I have, ideas that I have, and right now, for whatever reason, isn't the right time. And I can choose intentionally and use that logical mindset to discern that, because I might have tons of sparks in my life. And I do believe in constraint. I do believe in intentionality. So that's when they go together, and really asking, is now the right time? Is this really important to me? And seeing what my heart says, and then building the evidence in my mind to reinforce that belief, to reinforce that knowing. And I come back to this heart wisdom all the time. through intuitive journaling, through pulling oracle cards, through tuning into my body's energy when my mind feels very loud. And that is a huge piece that keeps me moving forward and not getting stuck or lost in the mind. So for you, ask yourself, if the mind has a lot of questions, answer them. Find the evidence that will support the goal or desire that you have, that will support why you're ready now, why this is important now, and why you're totally qualified, able, capable to move forward. And then check in with your heart. And again, ask yourself, does this feel deeply important to me? And see how your body feels. Does it feel expansive when you ask yourself that question? Do you lean in when you ask yourself that question? Do you feel a sense of ease or peace or knowingness when you ask yourself that question? Just notice. Notice what that feels like. And there are all different kinds of tools you can use to check into your intuition. If you have questions, reach out. I have so many resources about this. You can look on my Instagram about this. And one place to start is simply asking yourself that question and noticing how your body responds. Another tool is intuitive journaling, one of my favorite practices. You can ask that question again on a piece of paper, invite your heart, invite your higher self to join you in this conversation, and ask whatever question is on your mind. Is this important to do now? Is now the right time? Would it serve me to move forward? And let your pen write stream of consciousness and see what flows through. And again, throughout the whole process, every step of the way, you can invite your mind and your heart to work together instead of against each other. The next practice that is so important is to break it down and take it one step at a time. I find for myself, and I see this all the time in my clients, when you have a big goal, if you're just thinking about the end result and where you want to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it can feel very daunting. It can feel like, oh my gosh, I need to do all these things and I need to learn all these things and I need to be so much farther along than I am now. And truly, the way that you get anywhere is one step at a time. So it's bringing your mind back, using your beautiful mind to answer those questions and asking, what is essential to get started? What might not be necessary right now? What is the next step to take? So for me in the podcast, one of the biggest things that was holding me back from not wanting to move forward is in seasons past, doing this was taking up a lot of time. It was taking up about 5 hours a week, from interviewing people to editing to creating the social media content, writing all the copy for it, all of that. And as my business continues to grow, 5 hours a week is a lot of time. And I didn't want to need to spend that amount of time on the podcast. So one thing that was really important was to find a new editing platform. I was using GarageBand in the past and manually creating all the social media clips, and it was very meticulous and very time consuming. And I knew that there were other platforms specifically for recording and editing podcasts that were much more efficient, like Descript and Riverside. I had tried these platforms in the past, and every time I tried them, something happened. Like I had some technical difficulty, I couldn't figure it out, it just didn't work. So I just had in my head that it was going to be too complicated, there was no solution, and it just wasn't going to work. So again, now, as all of those thoughts came up, I started questioning them and choosing what I wanted to believe and reminding myself, other people use these platforms. Other people have found ways to streamline podcasts. This is so possible. There is a way for me to do this. I trust I will figure it out one step at a time. So I started experimenting with Riverside. I started experimenting with Descript again. And again, I was facing issues, technical difficulties, breakdowns. And I was getting frustrated and going through this whole process. And finally, I realized my computer was like 10 plus years old. And it wasn't the platforms that were causing the issues. It was my computer. and the hardware and the, combination of those things. So this was a great catalyst to buy a new computer. So now I'm recording this on a new computer. It has crystal clear video. I don't have to do this whole setup that I had before to attach my phone or a different camera to record. And I am slowly learning how to use these new podcast recording tools. And I trust that as I use them, as I experiment with them, I will get more and more proficient as I go. And I really had to, on my schedule, week by week, put my tasks of, okay, sign up for Descript, record a test episode, ask my friend to join me for that test recording, edit it, test it out, see what happens, and break it down so that the mind doesn't think, oh my gosh, there's so many things to do. Narrow it down to one. What's the one next thing to do in the process? And when I was thinking about the timeline for this and all of that, I gave myself a good amount of buffer time. I gave myself a couple months of, okay, in this couple months, I'm going to learn the editing software. I'm going to record the first initial interviews, and I'm going to give myself time and space to do this at a pace that doesn't feel rushed, that doesn't feel urgent, that feels really spacious. And again, what's crucial is to break it down into those baby steps. So for you, what's your goal? And what are the most essential steps to take right now? So if your most essential steps are to start your own business, let's say, what is the first step to take? And this could be very different depending on where you're at. The first step might be assess all of your skills and all of the possible businesses that you want to create and hone in on what's my idea for the type of business I want to move forward with. Step one. Maybe step two is, again, finding the evidence for why this matters, how this potential choice could align with your goals and values, really building up the evidence for yourself and why you want to make this change. So often when we think of steps, we think of all the things that we have to do. And for me, truly, what's most important is that mindset work, that heart connection, getting in that energy that feels empowered and capable and inspired. That's what's going to fuel the most potent actions moving forward. So if your brain goes to, what are all the things I have to do first? I invite you to go through this process and start at step one and ask yourself, what are the thoughts I can think first that will support my journey? So you start with the thoughts. And then once you hone in on your business, maybe the next step is assessing, where are you at right now? What tools or resources or support do you need that will help you move forward? Would it be beneficial to do some kind of certification program? Would it be beneficial to hire a mentor or a coach that can support your journey? Would it be beneficial to start an Instagram page and start actively sharing about your business? It could be completely different based off of wherever you're at in your unique journey. Again, what's most important is to break it down, to not let your mind go to all the things you could ever do in the scope of owning a business, and really narrowing in on what's most essential now. What is the skill set, action, resource, coach that would most support you in this moment? And how could you move forward one baby step at a time? Practice number 5 is all about feeling your feelings. If you don't know what I mean when I say feel your feelings, I mean feel the sensations and vibrations of feeling in your body. As I coach people, I find, and this happened with myself too, that I was never taught how to feel feelings. Most of us are not taught how to feel our feelings. Most of us are in the practice of avoiding, resisting, numbing out, distracting ourselves from feelings, and beginning to resist feelings and fear feelings versus actually spend time with them and feel them. So what is a feeling? A feeling is really a sensation, an experience that happens in your body, emotionally, physically, energetically. It's nothing to fear. And I find so often, and I experience this myself, and I experience this with my clients all the time, that we can have a perception of these feelings are good and I like them and I want them, and these other feelings are bad and should be resisted and avoided or moved through as quickly as possible, versus having the perspective that no feelings are bad or wrong. No feelings are good or bad. As a human being, we have this whole rainbow spectrum of emotions that are all part of the human experience of being alive. When we learn to accept them, when we learn to invite them in, when we learn to embrace them, that releases so much suffering, and it makes it so much easier to pursue goals, to step outside of our comfort zone, because those things often require feeling feelings that are quote unquote uncomfortable, or that you might not wish upon yourself on a daily basis, whether those feelings are confusion, doubt, insecurity, apprehension, shame, guilt, judgment, whatever it is. We don't go around thinking, oh, I would love to feel one of those feelings today. We don't often say that. And the journey of expansion, the journey of growth often, and I could say pretty much always, requires feeling some of those feelings. So instead of resisting or avoiding your feelings, it's about learning to feel them, learning to tune into what's going on in your body and make space for them instead of resist them. So this practice is about, what feelings are you willing to feel and what feelings are you willing to cultivate? This is an important question to ask yourself when you want to move forward with a goal. So when I asked myself this question, what feelings am I willing to feel? So in this podcast journey, I was willing to feel confusion. I was willing to feel frustration. I was willing to feel anxiety. I was willing to feel these things. And I definitely felt them as I was experimenting with the new technology and things weren't going the way that I wanted. All of that, emotions came up. And it was about reminding myself, okay, this isn't a problem. I'm willing to feel this feeling because this goal matters to me. I know why this podcast is so important. I know how it deeply aligns with my goals and values, and I'm willing to feel these feelings. So come on in, tell me what's going on, and really listening to the feelings, giving them space, feeling the sensations in your body and allowing them. And it's also about, what feelings are you willing to cultivate? So it's not just about feeling the quote unquote difficult, challenging emotions. It's about actively cultivating the feelings that you do want to feel. So I want to feel gratitude. I want to feel empowerment. I want to feel service, and thinking, using the mind and that heart, that connection, and asking myself, what could I think about that would help me feel those things? I could think about all the blessings that this podcast has brought in the past to me and other people. I could think about all the incredible humans I've met and interviewed along the way. I can think about all the synchronicities and opportunities that have opened up from recording this podcast that I didn't even know were going to happen originally. I can think about how fun and joyful it feels to me to interview people. I can think about how I trust and believe that sharing these stories will make a positive difference in the world, even if it's just one person, even if it's just you listening right now to this one interview. If you get one tiny nugget from this whole season, that was worth it. And it's reminding myself of those things and actively embodying those feelings until I can feel that coursing through my body, pulsing in my blood. What does that feel like? And allowing my body to settle in that emotion, allowing gratitude to really wash over me, feeling how my body transforms. How do I stand taller when I'm feeling empowered, when I'm feeling deeply connected, when I'm feeling of service? That is just as important as being willing to feel the quote unquote challenging emotions. It's being in the practice of thinking thoughts on purpose, feeling feelings on purpose. So for you, when it comes to your goal or desire, ask yourself, what do you think you might have to feel in this process? If you were to take a step towards this thing that you've been procrastinating on, what do you think you'd have to feel? Would you have to feel insecure? Would you have to feel confused? Would you have to feel uncomfortable? What is it? And then ask yourself, are you willing to feel those things? If the answer is yes, beautiful. They don't have the same power to stop you anymore. When they come up, you can remind yourself, it's okay that you're here. This is not a problem. This is not a problem. You're welcome here. I am open to feeling these things. And then ask yourself, what feelings are you willing to cultivate? Do you want to cultivate confidence? Do you want to cultivate joy? Do you want to cultivate pleasure? Do you want to cultivate gratitude? Whatever it is, ask yourself, what could you be thinking about? What could you be focusing on to intentionally cultivate these feelings on purpose? And then practice that every single day. This is where, again, lifting those muscles of thought work, of feeling work is so important. It's about repetition in order to really ingrain that, embody that in your whole being. The next practice is to surrender and offer it up. So what does that mean? This is something that I've been practicing in so many ways across so many areas of my life. For me, this is about inviting in spirit to co-create with me. It's about reminding myself that I don't need to have all of the answers within me and to trust that I am divinely guided on my journey and that spirit wants to work with me and I can invite them in. So when I say surrender, every day my prayer is to surrender needing to figure out this podcast all by myself, offering it up to spirit, asking for divine guidance in my journey, asking for guidance. Lead me to the people that it would serve me to interview. Lead me to the people that their stories need to be heard. Support me in knowing what's the next step that I can take in this journey and praying for that, setting the intention that I'm going to be divinely supported and releasing control, releasing the need to know how everything is going to go ahead of time. I find that's something that often holds people back. They want to know exactly for sure, am I going to be able to build a thriving business? How? By when? What's going to happen? They want to have it all figured out ahead of time. And hate to break it to you, but it is impossible to know how everything is ever going to go in your life. There is an element of trust that is required. If you are holding on with a death grip to control and thinking that everything has to go the way that you think you want it, that is a recipe for suffering. When you release that control, when you release needing to know how exactly everything is going to go and needing it to be a certain way in order to be satisfied, in order to be happy, in order to think you're on the right track, I don't think it's going to be very easygoing as you move forward on your path. So being able to release that control and release needing to know, I find is so beneficial and supportive when it comes to stepping into the unknown and moving forward towards a goal or desire that really matters to you. So I invite you to try that in whatever way that feels authentic to you, whether that's in prayer, whether that's in meditation, whether that's in your journal practice. See what it's like to surrender, needing it to be a certain way, and asking spirit for support. Because another thing that I find when we step out of our comfort zones and we take action towards a goal that really matters to us, that requires us to up level, we will be faced with challenges that are the exact things that we need to overcome in order to make progress towards that goal. So say you start working towards the goal and a roadblock comes up. That doesn't mean that you're not meant to proceed. It means that whatever roadblock you're facing, there's a lesson in that for you. And you moving through that roadblock, moving through that obstacle is going to teach you something, is going to help you build internal strength in some way, is going to help you brew your medicine that's going to make you more potent and powerful in whatever you're offering the world. That is beneficial. That can be a tremendously beautiful thing. And if we look at it that way, if we look at it not as what's going wrong here or why is this happening to me versus what can I learn from this? how can this be a gift to me? And not making it a problem, whatever it's happening. We can use that as beautiful medicine for ourselves. It might not happen in the moment, it might not be clear in the moment how or why whatever you're experiencing could be a gift, and that's okay. It's okay to be confused. And when you're able to offer it up and surrender and ask for that support, I trust that eventually it will become clear. It will become clear why that situation came up in your life, even if it's simply for the practice of acceptance, for accepting, okay, I'm experiencing this thing. And instead of fighting and resisting it, I'm going to build the muscle of acceptance, accepting what is, and seeing how that relieves suffering. The last practice number 7, is all about taking inspired action. So you've moved through the whole process. You've clarified your why. You understand how it aligns with your deepest goals and values. You've invited your head and your heart to work together. You've broken it down. You are clear on your next step. You're willing to feel challenging emotions and cultivate beautiful, supportive ones. You've surrendered and offered it up. Now you got to take action. It's time, right? So for me, it's so funny. I've recorded 3 interviews already, and the first episode I wanted to air is this solo episode that I'm recording right now. And I had on my schedule, okay, I'm going to do it on this day. I'm going to do it on this day. And as those days came, challenges came up, roadblocks came up. I got really sick. I experienced the loss of a dear friend. All these things came up. And now the by when that I had to air this podcast is next week, and I still hadn't recorded it. So it is Sunday now, August 11th. And I was like, okay, it's time. It's time, right? And as I went through this process, the thoughts came up, the feelings came up, all these things came up. And it was an invitation for me to walk through this process again, reconnect to my why, remind myself of how this aligns, feel the feelings, reconnect to who I want to be and how I want to show up for myself and for you listening right now. And then see how else I could support myself to get in the energy, get in the mindset of what would support me. I got my red lipstick on. I'm wearing a necklace that really means something to me that I got in Costa Rica. I got my pants that I bought in Peru a couple years ago. I'm doing all the things to get in the right mindset, get in the right energy, and there's still feelings buzzing around. It could be interpreted as fear, it could be interpreted as excitement, or a mixture of both. And it's okay. I invited in again that energy and intention of surrender, of trust, of inviting whatever will serve me and serve you listening to flow through. And eventually, you just got to go for it. And it might not feel comfortable. You might not feel ready, and that's okay. You don't ever have to feel 100% ready. It's like a baby bird, a baby eagle learning to fly. And the mama bird's like, okay, you ready? You ready to fly? And the bird's like, no, not yet. And it asks again, are you ready? No. And eventually the mama bird's just gonna throw you off the cliff and you're gonna have to fly. So there's gonna be a time where you might not feel ready and it's time to go for it and see what happens. And you get to learn every step of the way. You get to learn from your experience. You get to learn from your quote unquote failures. You get to learn from your successes. And I invite you to ask yourself, how can it all be perfect? No matter how the process goes, whether it feels messy or not, I invite you to make none of it a problem. I invite you to find gratitude and enjoyment along the way. Eventually, you just have to go for it. So to bring it all home, I'm asking you, what is that first step that you can take? What would it take for you to take that step this week, today? Even if it's a baby thing, I'm gonna research this. I'm gonna call this person. I'm going to buy this program. I'm gonna start an Instagram page. Whatever it is, how can you take that first step and know that those steps build momentum? Every step that you take leads to the next one. But if you never take the step, you're never going to know what's next. So I invite you to just take whatever inspired action that is calling to you right now and trust in the flow of your life, trust in the flow of yourself, Trust in spirit, trust in your heart, and see what happens. Because life is too short to wonder what if. And when you follow that internal spark of purpose, of passion, of creativity, of service, it makes a difference. It makes a difference in your life. It makes a difference for your family, for your friends, for your community, for everyone you ever touch. The ripple out impact is bigger than you could ever imagine, and it matters. So if you ever think, oh, this goal doesn't matter, me starting that business that I'm passionate about, it doesn't matter. It's never going to work anyways. It does matter. Think about how that can make a difference in the world and see what happens when you give yourself permission to do it messy, do it scared, and trust yourself to navigate it one step at a time. If it feels like your next step is getting support and accountability that will help you move forward towards your goals, head to ginacasbarro.com, book a free clarity call, and we'll talk all about that goal or desire that really matters to you, what's really getting in your way, and how working together could support you in bringing that dream to life. Okay, my friend, I am so excited to be back with you. I can't wait to share this season with you, and I will talk to you so soon. Bye.